So good evening, all of you. Thank you very much for joining for this show today evening, and welcome to the 31st edition of the Bespoke Show. So we started the Bespoke Show way back in early 2019, and today is the 31st TBS that we are doing, and we have done in multiple formats in the last 1.5 years. We started off with the offline format with colleges, and then we moved to this online format also, and now recently we also started the podcast format. So mainly what we do in the TBS is we try to take up contemporary topics and bridge industry academia gaps, specifically when we do in college campuses. The podcast format is a slightly different where we take up ideas which have something to do with social impact or out of the box entrepreneurship ideas or new ventures. So that is what we try to pick up in the podcast format. So online, of course, lockdown has made us take up online more often. Initially, we were doing a few online and more offline. But this is a good opportunity to also shift to online for us as well. We have hosted almost 100 panelists till now in the Bespoke Show in the last 1.5 years, all put together, online, offline podcast put together. So all details are available on the bespokeshow.live, and we're also available on all social media platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, Insta, where we post all these videos for wider reach so that the student community and even working professionals benefit from the discussions that we do. We take up diverse topics when we select for each of these shows. We don't restrict to strategy or leadership or only MBA kind of management kind of topics. So we have done something on Bollywood also in Indian Institute of Journalism and New Media sometime last year, where we discussed about Bollywood analytics, why Shah Rukh Khan does well in certain states and why Salman Khan does better in certain states and so on. So that topic also we have taken up. We have done something on social human trafficking and harassment at workplace. So that of course is more close to my area of interest because I also write on such topics. So that is what we have done till now. That's about the Bespoke Show. About Asha, Asha is the former managing director of a European multinational. She is a chartered accountant by qualification, and currently she is an independent director on the board of Toyota Financial Services India. She also runs a brand consulting firm called Brand Horizon in Bangalore. She works out of UBCT in Bangalore. So, and I am an engineer by default, like most of us, and a management graduate by compulsion, and an educationist by choice, and an author by passion. So that's my introduction. I write a lot. Right since high school, I've been writing. I've published multiple times in the Times of India. I've been quoted in the Deccan Herald, and written in Assam Tribune a couple of times, and a lot of management articles in ICFA University Press and other periodicals. I have authored 2 books till now. You can see them here, not very clear. My third book is underway now, should be ready by end of this year. So that's about me. And at the outset, again, I thank each of the panelists. I'll read out your profiles. Thank you very much for joining us today evening for this wonderful show. We have Hari TN with us. He's an IIT alumnus and has spent 11 years in Tata Steel, after which he moved to a string of high growth startups. He currently heads HR at BigBasket. Hari was LinkedIn's top voices for 3 consecutive years, starting 2016. He has authored 3 books till date and is in the process of writing his 4th book soon. Welcome, Hari. Thank you so much for
Thank you, Sid. It's a pleasure being on your show.
We have Salil Agarwal. He's an alumnus of NIT Bhopal and IIM Ahmedabad. Has over 34 years of diverse experience, spanning both industry and consulting in leadership roles with P&L responsibility. He's a pioneer in the business process outsourcing area and has been involved in planning and executing strategies to outsource business processes to India. He's a trained trainer and conducted programs in the area of relationship skills, Six Sigma, Kaizen, project management. Welcome, Salil. Thank you so much again for accepting our invitation to join us on this show.
Thank you, Sid.
And we have Devleena with us, Devleena Majumdar. She's an alumna of Presidency College, Calcutta and FMS Delhi. She's an entrepreneur, a social impact strategy consultant, and author of the crime fiction novel Marketplace for Murder. Devleena is a data-driven investigative journalist and covers education and mergers and acquisition on ET Prime. Welcome, Devleena. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, and great to meet everybody on the show.
when we talk of storytelling, generally it's associated with fiction, right? And we tend to associate that more with literature rather than an all-purpose tool. But actually, storytelling is a powerful tool that is used across platforms. So, what, in your opinion, is good storytelling, and what would you think a storyteller, what are the qualities that a storyteller should possess to be impactful in his writings? Maybe we can start with Hari.
Yeah. So I largely agree with you, Asha, in terms of, story. The word story has been normally associated with fiction and literature. In fact, the word story has almost become synonymous with, fiction. And the story is very different from storytelling, I think. The principles behind the story is storytelling. So typically, good authors have used several principles intuitively and in a very structured way to be able to tell their stories that the readers can relate to. And these principles of storytelling are gradually finding application in other forms as well. So for example, if you want to communicate the concept of Newton's first law, to the layman, you can do it very effectively through a story. If as a founder you want to raise money and you're speaking to investors, investors relate to stories far more than they relate to data. While they relate to data as well, I think they carry stories, they remember stories. I think stories have a way of remaining with people much longer after they listen to them. So I think stories are a very powerful communication tool. Everybody should be leveraging stories. Intuitively, I think in the last 6-7 years, I have understood the power of stories. Prior to that, I was a bit of, I used to write. My first book was sometime in 2003, and I think Sid didn't talk about that, but it was in 2003. And it was a relatively boring book. But subsequently, I think the last 3 books, and I will be wrapping up 2 more books to be published in August, has focused a lot more on storytelling. Even if it was serious stuff, even if it was about the crisis, even if it was about Big Basket saying no to Jugaad, even if it was about how startups should manage, I've used the story format reasonably effectively. And I believe what all of us have a story to tell. So I think a good storyteller should look at the world from this perspective, which is that everyone in this world has a great story to tell. It just needs a good reader or a good writer who will listen to them, understand them well, their nuances, their twists in their plots, and be willing to write with a lot of empathy and love. So I think you need to fall in love with your characters, the characters that you write about. And I am convinced that everybody in this world has an amazing story to tell. It just needs someone to pick up that story and tell that story. The more ordinary the people, I think the greater the story, the quality of the story, I think. I don't know who said this. Somebody said that the world is not made of, atoms, it's made of stories. When I heard it for the first time, I couldn't relate to that. But now I think I can completely relate to that. The world is just full of stories. Everybody is a story. Everything around you is a story. So I think the greatest trait that a author should have or a storyteller should have is just to be observant, listen, see, not judge, and not be biased, and just be very observant. And have a lot of empathy and love for the world around you. That's my view.
Debrina, do you believe storytelling goes beyond just fiction stories?
Yes, it's actually what I've been living last few years. So I've trained in finance and analytics. But if you see my journey last few years, I've actually really become a storyteller by accident. And then I've been living that story. So I look at it at 3 parts of this. Step 1 is all of us are, trying to tell our story, just as Hari mentioned. But sometimes we find that the story we are telling is not really what we are trying to do. There is a disconnect. That happened to me probably a few years back when I set up my first company called Kahaniya. And in Kahaniya, what we really do is we use data to tell insightful stories. So we create narratives using data. And data can be very, very interesting. I've done statistics and I love data. And that's one of my missions, how to make data more interesting for people who otherwise think it's boring. But that was not enough for me, right? So I found that stories could be used more in other places as well. So as I found my story, I also set up, I've been working in education for quite some time now. I set up another company called Story Ed. And what we have built is a platform called Chabi, as in the key. And we are using stories to make higher education more meaningful and less overwhelming for people, using that to get their 10th and 12th certificates, especially aimed at people who are not in formal education spaces. So again, storytelling can be used very powerfully in education. And that's the second thing I'm exploring. The third thing is, Sid talked about the journalism work I do. So again, I'm an investigative journalist. So I depend on data, I depend on analysis of numbers, and then I craft a narrative around that. So storytelling is something, again, I use in my journalism work. So personally, I've experienced it in these three areas, which is journalism, in education, and in business using data. But I think in every area we look at, storytelling does have an application, and that's because it's a fundamental way in which we connect with people. It just is a better way to connect with people. And that's really why it works. It's nothing new. It's nothing which is, discovered in the 21st century. It's an age-old skill. We all have it. It's neither an art nor a science, which means that it's not few people can do it, and it's not a framework that everybody can follow it. It's a learned skill. The more we do it, I think the better we become at it, and the more people like it. So that's how I look at it, and I've been practicing it in my world in these three areas. Now, when it comes to second part of your question, as we find our story and tell our story, I think the most critical part is living the story, right? How do we accept who we are and start living with that? And that's very important for storytellers who are trying to create, powerful stories. So, Sid called this session ABCs of a great story. So I'll answer in the same framework, ABCs. A storyteller needs to, number one, understand audience. That's the A. So unless you understand audience and, make it simple and relevant for them, no story works. Nobody will hear it, and that's not a great story. Second, B is the basics of a structure. While there are endless stories, just like musical tunes, there are very few story structures. And we know these story structures, boy meets girl, man falling in the hole and coming out of the hole. There are very simple story structures, and we can create new context and new emotion to bring to those structures. That's the B. And the C is the characters, as Hari mentioned. The more we create characters who are real, they're not perfect, they are real, right? Characters who can really make us feel that, yes, this could be one of us. This could be us living our life like this. And the more the story becomes interesting and people connect with the story. So that's how I at the application of storytelling, and also, what a great storyteller should have.
I actually wrote an article on LinkedIn about 5 years ago, asking a question to people, do you have a story? And I was arriving, that question had a very different context to what Hari and Deblina are talking about, right? It was more coming from a marketeer. It was more coming from a management consultant. It was more coming from a person who goes for a networking event, right? Typically, invariably, in most of these situations, one of the first questions that someone asks you is, tell us about yourself, or, can I know a little bit more about you? And it was in that context that I asked people, do you have a story? Right? Because, a lot of us are not able to even build that first connect. And to me, building that first emotional connect happens if you have a powerful story. Now, that powerful story does not have to be your entire biography. It could be just something that you talk to him about or talk to her about, depending on the situation, depending on the context, depending on what you know. And I actually have written in that article, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you'll find it in amongst the posts that people who are skilled will have multiple stories. They will not have one story. So if I was asked the question by 5 different people, my response will be different to different people depending on what they have told me and how I can connect with them. So to me, storytelling is not just about being an author. It's not just about books. It's about being able to connect with people. It's being able to market yourself. It's being able to it's a basis of communication. So I've been a communications trainer for many years. I was a trainer for communication way back in '90. I never became a professional trainer, but I've conducted many workshops on communications training. And one of the things that I used to talk about was the ABC that Deblina talked about, maybe in slightly different words. Who's your audience? What are you trying to tell them? And the content of it, right? So I think that to me this is what storytelling is, and it has to be a part of everyone's life. Unfortunately, I do not think that our education system does justice to storytelling, right? Because we are, even when we write an essay, when, a class 4 or a class 5 or a class 9 student is expected to write an essay, he or she is expected to write what is already written somewhere else, and the teacher evaluates the person on having covered the 10 points that were there in this standard essay. So the storytelling is actually killed in our education system. Sorry, I'm digressing. Please carry on.
No, I think that's a fact. We can probably come back to that point again. But what I really wanted to ask you was, you were mentioning about a compilation of stories. So have you used storytelling as a narrative tool to convey messages?
Right. So when I talk about my book, yes, I'm not an author of my book. I am, as I was talking to you earlier, I'm probably at best a compiler. I'm one of the contributors. Yes, there's a lot of work that happened, right from convincing people to write, right from being convinced that the idea will work. It was a lot of work, right? Probably it would have been easier to write a book than to create a compilation of 19 different stories. And typically, a lot of people own the story so much that they do not allow you to change it. So I actually had to reject a few stories because people wrote something which just did not fit into the larger context of the book. So the brief that I gave people was to pick up one experience from their life, right? To talk that this is not a biography, this is not an autobiography, it is just one experience. So we said, pick up something that has either touched you very significantly, an experience that has moved you significantly, a time of life which was significant for you in terms of when you look back. And I said, if you were to write your own autobiography and you divide it into 20 chapters, pick up one chapter that you think will be very exciting. So each of these is just one chapter from the autobiography of these different people. So there are 19 stories in this book, and each person is writing about one such story.
If you look at a lot of content that is available in the market today, or even on the internet about making a book successful, a lot of stuff goes around the quality and the content in the book and how it should be structured. And of course, no doubt that is very critically important. But what other factors, given the scenario that we are in a hyper-competitive market and there are so many authors churning out books each month, each day, so what are the other factors that should be given weightage, and what weightage should be given to each of these factors according to the panelists? Maybe we can start with Hari again. Apart from the great content.
Tough question, Sid. Very frankly, I think Deblina touched upon the ABC, where you need to understand your audience. I think even before understanding your audience, I think you should be passionate about what you're writing, and I think reaching the maximum audience may not be an objective for everyone. So, for example, you had wonderful movies like Pather Panchali or Lunchbox that addressed a niche audience, got the recognition, and those who loved the movie loved it absolutely. And there are movies like Dangal and Sholay which had a much wider audience. So I think you should be clear as to what is the story you want to tell. And it's not necessary for everyone to be a best-selling author like Amish Tripathi or anybody else. I think then it becomes a bit artificial. So I think you should pick something that you are deeply passionate about, something where you can genuinely share something which a bunch of audience can relate to, and do a good job of that. So pick something that you're deeply passionate about, find your audience, and do a good job of that, which is, at the end of it, many of them must feel, that, yes, I learned something, or I had a few aha moments, or I thoroughly enjoyed it. It touched me deeply. So I think some feeling it must arouse in the audience. So I think that's very critical. So I would say that, success should not be measured just by the sales, and that's true for movies as well. I think success is about the target audience that you have, whether they like what you've written. And I think topics are such that almost everybody knows a lot of what you already write. So, for example, I've written a book called Saying No to Jugaad, The Making of Big Basket, a couple of others as well. I think whatever is there in the book is not going to be news or not going to be, something that people don't know about. But I think it's the way you tell it. Do you make it interesting? Do you provide a new perspective to what people already know? I think that is what I at least, look for. That's my quest. Even when I'm asked to speak at a conference on any topic, and that topic could be as common as diversity and inclusion, for instance, or it could be about how startups can scale sustainably. Very common topics. But my, quest has always been, can I provide a perspective which has not been written often? Can I make people sit at the edge and want to listen, to what I have to say? So I think that's the way I see it. So content, I think, is ultimately king. Storytelling style, the ability to, make people remember, relate to it. I think those are critical too.
So success is very subjective, and what
Yeah.
from that entire
Yes.
exercise.
Yes. Although I think it is everyone's quest in some way to be a best-selling author, frankly. I think even niche authors at some point of time do aspire to, write a book that will sell like hotcakes. But somewhere I think they also recognize that their entire writing style is not amenable to, mass liking, because mass likes are always generally about messages being very, very optimistic, more optimistic than realistic, providing a lot of hope sometimes when hope is not, realistic. I think they have a lot of positivity. It provides, a story or a life which people can aspire to. I think success comes from doing some of those as well. So Pather Panchali, when you watch a movie, it's just like you're a bystander watching a wonderful, set of events and the story, but it's not something that you will, want to happen in your life. But when you watch a Dangal, for instance, or a Sholay, happy ending, very positive energy, good things, good triumphs over evil. So all those things are very critical for mass appeal, is what I think.
Sid, I have I would like to respond to your question, with a story about how my book happened. And I think that will sort of give you a very interesting perspective to your question. So, and I've written this in the preface of my book. So I've been wanting to write a book for a long time. And the way I would think of a book is not that I was very passionate about it, but, an idea that I thought people would like to read about. The problem is that I'm not able to elaborate too much, and therefore my book would fall short, and I would finish my entire story in 1,000 words, and I didn't know what to do with it, right? So maybe I could have converted it into a blog and put lots of blogs there. So this is where this book happened. One day I was thinking, I said, listen, why can I not invite multiple people to come in and contribute a story? Now, I have been organizing get-togethers of the IIM fraternity in Gurgaon for the last 12 years, right? We've been having a monthly get-together, which is now virtually everyone seems to know about. Everyone who's an IIM alumni would know about these get-togethers. And I identified a bunch of people from there to tell us stories, just like we do it in a physical get-together. And the objective was that people will like to read these real-life stories. So the context was that, young alumni and older alumni would like to read about real life stories. I haven't really thought about, what will be success, how it will become popular, when will it become popular. It's very, very new. It's just been launched. We would hope that, people will like it. The feedback so far has been very, very good. The good thing is that everyone who has read it, multiple people have said that they enjoyed it so much that they actually went through it in one single sitting. So that's amazing, right? And most people, when I asked them, what did you really like about it? They said, oh, I found that these stories, I could relate to these stories because these are real life stories. Like Hari was trying to say, they're not necessarily fiction. They're not, it's not about something which can happen to, which will not happen to you. These are things that happen to people. So for example, people do not talk about failures. This book has stories where people talk about how things did not work out for them. So I think that's where people build a connect. People see that these kind of things happen to us. There are stories of success. There's stories of, someone talks about a decision that he could not make and he figured out how to do that, and how it changed his perspective in life.
The way I look at this, the creative part of storytelling, I think it starts much before we start writing. It starts with reading. The more we read, the more empathy we have, the more we observe. I think stories starts from our imagination and from our experience, the lived reality, right? Which we inhabit. And that's the reason why, though all of us have stories, very few of us actually get down to writing it, right? Writing part of it is extremely hard. And most people give up. They have some manuscripts which they have written on and they give up, right? So the reason for that is, there are two sides to every story. There's the audience who is waiting to hear it, hopefully, and who will enjoy a well-written story. And there's you, the author. And the author also comes with a particular experience, imagination level, choice of words, choice of subjects, choice of language, and all of that, right? So I'll give you a simple example. If Red Riding Hood, all of us know this fairy tale. Now, if we were to look at the story today, we could tell the story in so many different ways. It could be the story told from the point of view of the wolf. The wolf one day gets up in the morning, and then what does the wolf see, right? It could be told from the point of view of a woodcutter who maybe was in the forest that day and didn't help the girl, right? The story of guilt, right? So the same story could be told in so many different ways. I think it's just how we look at it, our experience, our way of looking at the world, and our context, and also how passionate we are about the subject and how we can make that connect with the audience. So that's the creative part of it. Just to sum this up, I'll give an example. When Alfred Hitchcock, when Hitchcock basically, when he wanted to say that the grandmother is scared, he wouldn't just say grandmother is scared. He would bring her on the stage, he would let her scream. So that's storytelling, right? It's show and not tell. We can tell many things people won't believe. If we can show it in less words, but in really visual, creative ways, people will actually connect with it. So that's the creative part of it. And I think each of us have different ways of doing it, which we are strong in. There's no one way to tell a story. The other part of it is the business part of it, which I think is what you were trying to also ask, Sid. I think sometimes authors are very good at that part. They are great promoters as well of their work. Sometimes we are not. And I think, again, probably we have to be better, but maybe you can't always be exactly the same promoter of your as others are. So I think it's good to take viewpoints from literary agents and from publishers. I think they have great knowledge about the industry and they know what kind of things audiences are looking for. And as long as your passion, your work ties into one of those themes, I think there's a great commercial match as well.
So basically you are suggesting that authors should also maybe outsource that part of the work that they're not good at, the marketing or researching about what the audience wants, to the publishers, and then write based on what the market would want if they want to really go on a mass drive to sell books.
So I think I don't think you can outsource it. I think it's more a discussion. Like, when you have a literary agent or a really good publisher, it becomes a discussion, right? So they know you, they know what you're good at. They also know what the market is looking at. So there is a lot more discussion, I feel, which happens when you have found yourself in that space, where you have some trusted people to talk about, if for a first-time author, I think some of these are not possible. I think there you have to go with your passion, your experience, your gut, and just, find the audience and as well promote the book. I don't think any of us can today not promote the book.
Just to add to your point about the book and character and length, we just touched upon that point. According to you, what is an ideal length in today's world, given the reducing attention spans? Gone are the days when people, used to read very, very fat books and novels. So I don't think anybody has the patience to read 3,000 words, 1 lakh words today. And that's why we are seeing a lot of novellas coming out in the market, maybe 20,000 words, 25,000 words. What, according to you, should authors do, and where are we heading?
So I think there is still some catching up to do in terms of traditional publishing. So traditionally, I think publishers still accept books at a novel length, 40,000 words minimum, which is about 165, 170 pages. That's how I kept my novel. I kept it at 165 pages because I wanted it to be short. It's a crime novel. I wanted the plot to be so quick that people are able to read it in one sitting, and that's what happened. But I think there is audience for slower reads as well. So there are books which are longer length, but which are written so well, with so much context and with so much of good use of language that people do read. I think that's the idea about, identifying A, what you are good at and what you can write, and B, also what kind of audience is looking for what kind of work. So I still see literary fiction, which are longer in length, and I still see small kind of fiction novellas coming up as well. I think there are more avenues right now. We have platforms like Juggernaut, which publish, small kind of stories. We have, a lot of book to screen deals happening right now. So my book is also, in the process of getting adapted. So I think with that, what happens is there are different ways in which you can experience the book. If somebody doesn't want to read, they can probably find other ways of, experiencing the book. There are podcasts of books. There are screen adaptations of books. So the best way, I think all of us probably as authors are biased. We would like people to read, but if people don't have time to read or they don't enjoy reading, I think there are many different ways of experiencing the book, which technology has enabled today. And we should probably not shy away from that. At least I don't think I would.
Hari, we were talking earlier on about, in fact, Salil was mentioning about how the current education system does not promote storytelling amongst children. But on the other, there's another perspective where the pedagogy is moving towards experiential learning. So children are given an opportunity to discover things for themselves. So I feel there is potential for children of today to actually become good storytellers. Do you think storytelling is something that's born naturally, or is something that can be inculcated through the right system of providing the education and the environment in which they grow?
Again, a very difficult question, especially when it comes to education and figuring out, the correlation between what is taught in school or imparted in school versus subsequent abilities in life. So, for example, there are so many skills that can be imparted in school, and there's limited time. Painting, for example, cooking, writing. And I think over centuries, people have figured out that reading, writing, arithmetic are the essential skills that impart in school, that the students can then go on and build other subsequent life skills and other skills on top of these broad abilities. So that's the way I think about it. So I think we have enough ingredients about storytelling. So for example, English literature, I studied Hindi literature, I did study in school. And we were exposed to, good stories, Charles Dickens, and several other really good stories, including contemporary stories. I think they make a mark on people who could potentially go on to become storytellers later. Some may not enjoy these stories, but not everybody likes everything. So I think I was touched by a lot of these stories, and I loved, reading literature. And though I, like Deblina, come from a very, science background, physics was my first passion, engineering was my passion. But at the same time, literature was also something that I've loved, history is something that I've loved. So I think we are exposed to stories of all kind in our childhood, stories from historical, figures in our life. So if you just, if I just think about how I've been writing in the last few years, I haven't been reading a lot in the last few years. But actually, Deblina also said that it's important to read to be able to develop, broader, newer perspectives and, churn those along with your own ideas. But I think I seem to have done that in the last so many decades already, because when I was not writing, I was always thinking. Everything around me, I was observant right from school. The story of Akbar and how he was different from Aurangzeb was so fascinating. Genghis Khan's life was so fascinating, Attila the Hun. And it's not just in history. So I was fascinated by all these characters. I was fascinated by the lives of many scientists. And these are, in my leisure time, I kept pondering about all of this. So for example, when I'm writing my next book, which is getting completed on, living and managing in a crisis, making the best out of it. a lot of what I'm writing has already been seeded in my mind ages back. For example, every crisis has in its seeds of innovation. So the story in 1453, Constantinople taken by the Ottoman Turks of the Byzantine Empire, end of the Byzantine Empire, they blocked all the trade routes, land routes to Asia from Europe. And it triggered a wave of innovation, people exploring other alternative sea routes. And this is such a fascinating story about how Vasco da Gama, came all the way to, Goa, Kerala. And it's not as simple as one would like to imagine, traveling along the coast, taking a turn, eastwards at the tip of South Africa. Actually, it's a far more fascinating story. So I think I have listened to stories since childhood. So, in summary, the answer to your question is I think all of us have enough exposure to things that matter in life already, and one can always fine tune. There will be people who say, that American education system is far better. Maybe it is far better. Liberal arts is all far better than our structured rote way of teaching. But I'm not yet fully convinced that, bad education can make such a big difference in life, or a great education. I think moderate education can bring out the best in some people and leave some people, leading an average life.
Very interesting. The only concern I have in mind is the current generation are not as much exposed to reading as the earlier generations, right? The smartphones taking over.
But the way I would respond to that is that, if we have to accept change, and technology is bringing about change. Just go back to a century, for example, right? Nobody read. People listened to stories from their grandmothers, grandparents, parents. If I go back to my grandfather's era, right, they didn't read. So they assimilated stories by listening to people. And that changed when people began assimilating stories, reading the printed versions. And when printed versions came, I'm sure some people said that people will no longer be able to listen to stories because grandmothers are no longer there. So I think this change is inevitable. And I think those who can tell stories, those who can learn stories, can absorb stories, will continue to do so irrespective of the technological changes. A tool can only accelerate, some stuff, and tool cannot change people who cannot tell stories. A better tool or a worse tool will not make a difference. That's the way I think.
That's a nice perspective. Deblina, do you think it's inborn and comes naturally, or is something that can be taught or inculcated?
I think if you see children, they love stories, right? All of us as children love stories. I think it's as we grow up, we probably sometimes think it's not relevant to us anymore. And I do see, one critical thing I wanted to bring out here. I've been working in education now for a long time. Every subject is actually a reading problem. Every subject is a reading problem. Hari talked about foundational learning. The most foundational of foundational learning is reading. And World Bank's research on this says that in India, about less than 50% of our kids in grade 3 can read at that level. Which means, as they grow up, if they go to higher classes, they won't be able to understand even other subjects because they can't read. So that sense, even math is a reading problem. So I think reading is the bottom line. I don't think any skill is as important as reading. And how we do it, right, is what is shaped by our circumstances and technology. So we can ask people to read books. If they do, they can listen to podcasts. The earliest example of the spread of storytelling, Ramayana and Mahabharata, was on the walls of temples. So I think people always innovate how you tell stories, right? We have learned so many stories from our grandparents, and we have never forgotten those. So I think in education, storytelling is extremely critical for 3 reasons. The first reason, of course, is makes it interesting. We all remember the story of, I've been reading about history of Italy today for some reason, and there was one family called Medici family. They were actually bankers who became rulers of the entire Medici, of the Florence, region. And they were the leaders in Renaissance movement, and how they managed it, during plague, etc., was really amazing to understand. So there's economics within that, there's finance within that, there is social messages within that. There's so much within the stories, right? So I think stories help us remember, they help us engage, they also give us empathy, because at the end of the day, in stories, nobody is really a hero or a villain, right? Everybody could have shades of gray within them. I think it gives us that sense of empathy, which in today's world we are fast losing because we're becoming so polarized in our views, and we think what we are saying is right and nobody else could be right. So I think it's critical that storytelling should be used by all educators. It should be really, used in education. The form and the format can change. I think that is where we should really rely on technology. If kids don't want to read large format books, we can make it illustrated books. We can make it other formats which they want to read. But the habit of reading, I don't think will die and should not die. The way in which we read, I think, can change. And yes, it is a skill all of us have.
So Asha, my views are a little different from both Hari and Deblina. I think, so I've been a bright student throughout school, throughout college. I've been like a topper. And honestly, nothing could ever excite me to read history, geography. I was good with numbers. And I think for me, storytelling or understanding stories and the whole context happened much, much later in life. And that's why I'm very convinced that today a lot more focus needs to happen on storytelling. And I see the difference, right? A child, and I'm talking specifically of the Indian education system, where, you are actually taught to learn by rote and memorize stuff. Yes, there are schools which are changing this. Yes, there are schools that are coming up and saying, okay, give a topic and go and discover and write about it. Which is a great start. But if I look at 95%, okay, I'm giving you a random number based on judgment, but 95% of schools still don't do that, right? And that's why if I meet a child from the Western world, I find that child a lot more inquisitive, a lot more open to accepting, talking of new ideas than a child in India. And those are the ingredients, that inquisitiveness is the ingredient to a good story. So I'm absolutely convinced that I learned it much later. So I did a course on creativity. This was when I was at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and as late as when I was about 22 years old. And I think that changed a lot of my thinking around some of these things, right? However, I agree with Hari about not being able to read. So I don't read a lot, right? But if you have read so much and it's there in your head somewhere, I think it's the age to connect dots and say, oh, this is how things work and this is how things are happening, which translates into stories. But coming back to the education system, I think that focus, if we can bring it back through some form, whether it is reading or whether it is giving the constructive assignments or whether it's about changing the way we do it, I don't have immediate answers.
Right, but I think it's so important because I think storytelling is critical today, not just from a literary perspective, but also in various other platforms in everyday lives. We need storytelling to convey the right kind of message to the right audience in the right way. Sid, would you like to take over?
Yeah, I think valid points, but I strongly believe schools have a very strong role in inculcating this habit. I have been fortunate to have studied in such a school because early years are the time when children have to be encouraged to write and speak about their stories, not just write essays on certain topics, but speak about them and be vocal about it. Else, I think the other people who write great stories or tell great stories are despite the system rather than because of the system. So anyway, I think now we can move on to, if the panelists permit, we can move on to sharing the synopsis of your favorite stories and your favorite books. Can we start with Deblina?
So I read a lot. I read different types of books: history, crime, literary fiction, comics. I think I'm obsessed with books actually. But one of my all-time favorite authors is Agatha Christie. I mean, for two reasons. One is, she was also curious about history and music and chemistry, subjects I like. And second is, the way she crafted murder mysteries, I think was something I learned a lot from her. And the second person is Satyajit Ray. I'm a Bengali and I've grown up in Bengal, and people know him as a filmmaker, but his writing, his illustration, his short stories, his ghost stories, there's a lot more to him, and I think which we were fortunate growing up in Calcutta to read. And I think those two authors really, really inspired me. The other person is Margaret Atwood. I think the way she crafts stories, dystopian fiction, again, I think I found really, really interesting. So I think these three authors I would say, but I can go on. Unless you stop me, I'll
What about your book, Deblina?
Yeah, so my book, this is my book, the latest one. It's called Marketplace for Murder. So this is actually a crime fiction. It's a whodunit and a whodunit novel. But what I've done is I've questioned two things here. One is, what is murder? Is it just murder of human body? What about murder of human identity? So I'm questioning here the concept of digital identity, the long shadows all of us leave online, and what happens when somebody can just take over our identity. That's the first thing I'm questioning. And the other thing I'm questioning is really what can go wrong in a startup, right? And I think all of us, I think Hari especially has seen that. I have seen that as an investor, as an entrepreneur. And I'm questioning that, especially in the form of one area, which is giving small finance loans. Very, very relevant area for India today. And in this book, I've tried to focus on something which goes wrong. There's a murder which happens, and there's a journalist who's actually the investigator, citizen investigator in this novel. And through the alternating voice of the first person criminal, would-be criminal, one of the characters is actually the criminal, and this third person narrator, I'm trying to take the story forward to its natural climax. So if you give me the permission, I'll probably read a very small paragraph. Yeah, okay. So this is actually how the book starts. I stayed in the shadow, my face a mask of polite dismay. How could this happen? So sorry for your loss. Would you say I killed the old lady? I didn't need to. She was just too stupid. It was so easy to build her profile, clean her out, take all her money. I was the uninvited, unnoticed guest at the funeral. Couldn't resist a last look. No one knew how she really died. Heart failure comes in many forms. And now it's your turn. Your name, that's all I need to obliterate you. I am that shadowy scavenger in the garbage dump, patiently going through each stinky piece of leftovers from yesterday's excess. The garbage you heap on the internet, the pieces of yourself you throw around carelessly, its stench piling up slowly. The phone number listed for delivery service, the last party picture in which you were tagged, your address hovering hope helpfully, just to scroll away from being locked in my memory. Tiny pieces of a puzzle I can piece together as I brew my morning coffee and play my music. So that's how it starts. So this is the voice of the unknown criminal. And as the book progresses, we realize that one of the characters is this person, and it becomes a classic whodunit and whodunit.
I don't have a physical copy. My book came out literally, I don't know if, okay, there.
Chapter out of my life.
Right. So that's my book. It's only available online right now. It was literally published 10 days ago. And the real audience that I'm targeting are students, people who are in their first job, people who are studying MBA. Because what we have done is we have collected stories of 19 IIM alumni who have talked about one particular experience of their life. So the book is called A Chapter Out of My Life. And I've said gems from the lives of ordinary people. Right? Now, why ordinary? So I said these are not extraordinary people. Extraordinary people, because they are not extraordinary, they are ordinary. But they are not ordinary. They are, they have achieved a lot, except that they will probably never be written about. They will never write an autobiography. And therefore, we said, let's collect 19 stories from their lives and bring them together for an audience that may like to read them. The feedback so far has been excellent. It was not easy. People do not, I think Deblina mentioned, people don't like to write. It's not easy for people to write stories, and people get so caught up in their normal work that storytelling and story writing is typically does not happen. Even for me, it's not easy, right? So I still look at it more functionally. I cannot relate to the way I think Hari or Deblina as authors are talking about storytelling. So for me, that is something maybe 5 years later, I may be thinking like that. So these stories are very authentic. They're real life stories. They're stories, the style and character of the stories have been retained to what the people have written. Yes, we got it. We edited it. In fact, my daughter edited a lot of it to make sure that it becomes very readable. People, the feedback so far, about 200 people have read the book. About 20-25 people have written to me personally saying that they've loved the book, and the reactions have been very, very positive. So just I'll read out a very, very short paragraph. Like I said, there is no plot. These are 19 stories. There's one guy who talks about a startup that he did 5 years after his MBA, and he talks about how he failed. Today he is a very, very successful corporate executive. Another guy talks about how he's a pharmacist and he, by absolutely coincidence, ended up at IIM Ahmedabad and changed his career. A third person talks about how he got fed up with the corporate world and today has built up a significant international brand. So these are small stories, right? And they just talk about, someone talks about, how it took him 8 years to figure out what is the best job that he really wants to do. So I think I'm going to read out one little piece from my story. So just to give you the context so that you understand that piece, I've narrated 3 incidents out of my life, 3 very specific incidents, all happened in spans of 3 months each roughly, where I had wanted to do or look at life in a particular way. I had planned life in a particular way, and circumstances completely changed my plan. So in the context of those incidents, so I've narrated 3 incidents, and then I have a paragraph which says thinking back, and I say, in retrospect, I don't know if each of these decisions was good or bad decisions. So the way life presented it, I was forced to take a decision and choose a course which was completely different from what I'd originally planned. So in that given sense, I'm saying in retrospect, I don't know if each of these decisions was a good or a bad decision. Apart from these, there have been many other incidents where life has moved in a direction completely different from the way I planned it. All these incidents make me believe that this is the way my life was scripted, and there is no way I could have changed anything. Given this context, I have learned to take life as it comes along. Certain things are in line with what one wants and others are not. But this is the journey. The script is written and one has to go through with it. Many years ago, thinking about such incidents, I wrote, "We are puppets in the hands of God. It is God's graciousness that He has given us a mind to believe that we choose our own actions, because otherwise this life will not be worth living." And truly, what is happening right now under lockdown and COVID-19 is probably the ultimate. I think the world did not know this was coming. The way everyone's life has changed, we had so many plans, and the way everyone's life has changed, I don't think anybody could have stuck to their script.
That's very interesting. Looking forward to reading your book.
Thank you.
Which book would you start with? You've written 3 already.
Yeah, so I've written 3 books in the last 3 years, in 1 year, 17, 18 and 19. In 2020, I've written 2 books. Both are to be published in August. So this is the first book which I wrote, which is, you can't read it, obviously, there's a mirror image. So this is Cut the Crap and Jargon, Listen to the Startup Trenches, very startup-oriented book. This was actually my favorite. This is Cutting the Gordian Knot, India's Quest for Prosperity, where C. Rangarajan, who was the next RBI governor, has written on top saying a remarkable book to guide the future of India. But this was a book for the niche audience. So it.
I love this.
Oh, you read that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a very niche audience. And Cut the Crap and Jargon and the Big Basket one, Saying No to Jugaad, these became extremely popular. So I would say that this Saying No to Jugaad is written in a bit of a story style, while we've managed to also communicate key lessons and what Big Basket is all about, how the company was built. In fact, the need for writing this book, I felt really because in the last several years, you see some of the hubris at startups and you find, capitalization, valuations seem to be far more important than building a sustainable business. And I found that here we are actually running a company, building a company in a very sustainable way using first principles. And why not talk about it? Why not write about it? So that's how the Saying No to Jugaad came about. The next one is getting published by Penguin soon, which is From Pony to Unicorn and how to grow a startup sustainably. That in that book, we've also tried to create some kind of a framework that founders could use. And there also we've interspersed that with a lot of personal stories as well as stories of other entrepreneurs. The last one, which is coming up, is about how do you deal with a crisis. I think one topic that I think that in the beginning, I think Asha asked, how do you spot an idea? So I really felt that we're in the midst of a crisis like this, first time in the, in our living memory for at least all of us. And I thought it's a great opportunity to draw attention to, a crisis. And in this book, we've started with this, the COVID-19 outbreak, but all the subsequent chapters are about, different types of crisis for a person, for an individual who loses a loved one, a near and dear one. That would be a far bigger crisis than any pandemic. For a company that loses reputation because of an unanticipated event, that would be far more scary than a pandemic. And finally, there are crises that many of us are born into. Some individuals are born into a crisis, born into adversity, and still make the best of life. So this book, we are telling a lot of stories around different types of crises. And we've gone out and said, we are going to tell our own stories and tell the stories of ordinary people around us. We will draw a lot from corporate folklore as well as history, and then make it interesting. So that's broadly it's it.
Sounds very interesting, Hari. So I don't know if you have read about, you talked about from pony to unicorn. There's a concept of, zebra startups. Have you read that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so we organized a panel discussion on the subject. Zebra startups are also about socially responsible startups which do not run after funding. So, you might want to just check that out.
Yeah, sure.
I'm very curious to know one point. All three of you have shared about your own books. How do you decide the title of your book? I mean, is it something that you decide before you start writing, or during the course of the journey, or post completion of the book? How does it normally work? Maybe I'd like to hear this from all the three panelists.
So maybe Hari with 5 books should start.
So I think I've gradually realized that the title of a book is very important. You might say that content is the king, but I think title catches attention. And on top of that, content is super important, because word of mouth depends on the content, not on the title. But title catches attention. So saying no to Jugaad, I think, was a title that I picked up because there was so much being spoken about Jugaad. There were both points of view that Jugaad is important. There was a point of view that Jugaad is a very bad way. It's a very, very Indian way. So I knew it will catch attention. Then cut the crap and jargon, right? We thought it will catch attention. Lessons from the startup trenches, so much of jargon all around. So we said, cut the crap and jargon. So I thought it will catch attention. So pony to unicorn. Unicorn, everybody is talking about a unicorn. And we know that, from pony to unicorn is a way of telling someone that how do you scale a small startup to becoming a large company. So that's, I think, title is important. So a title, you can start with a working title. But as you progress, I think some more catchy titles, attention-drawing titles you might come up with. I think title is important.
Interesting. Devleena?
Yeah, I think the title tells the story, in very short, right? That's the way I look at it. So my title, A Marketplace for Murder, the people who have read the book have written back and they've understood why I've named the book A Marketplace for Murder, and they love the idea. I talk about digital marketplaces in the book, and I question the idea of murder. And in a way that title tells the story, right? So I think the more creative we can get with our titles, and the more I think we can play on what's already happening and what people can connect with very easily, maybe a little bit of wordplay. I think that makes it very interesting. But
did you conceptualize the title prior to start writing the book?
No.
Not really.
So I think for me, the character came first. I really, started thinking of the character first. And for me, it was actually the negative character I thought about first. And then once the story flowed and I was, really able to visualize the story, then I thought of the title.
Interesting.
For me, so Asha, for me, the title came first. In fact, the marketing of the book started by convincing 19 people to write. Right. So the process went on for about a year and a half. About 45 people confirmed they'll write, and only 8 actually wrote in the first 3 months. And then, a year passed where, people would not respond and they stopped responding. And then finally, I managed to collect 19 stories. But, right from the time that I started writing to these guys, this title had come first. What I'm convinced is that the title has to be catchy. It's like if you see it on a bookshelf, and not just the title, the cover has to be catchy. So I, designed my own cover in under the lockdown. I actually visually formed an image of the cover. I designed it 6 months ago. I'd said, what is it that something, if I see it in the distance in a bookshelf, first I should be willing to pick it up, and then I should be tempted to buy it. So I think I'm wearing my marketing hat and saying, how will it work? And I'm experimenting. Let's see.
Interesting. Sid is my co-host. He's an author, but I have never asked him this question. Sid, did your two books, Bihar Ki Beti and It's Official Stupid, did you conceptualize the title prior to writing the book, or how did it work?
In the middle of the book, when I was halfway through, I think that's
okay. Actually been a very amazing and refreshing experience to be amongst authors. I'm the only non-author in the whole panel. So I think there are a lot of takeaways personally for me and motivating to think of writing a book. And I hope the same sentiments resonate with the other audience who will be watching this program. Storytelling, as the name connotes, connotates, is more of a narration, but I realize that there's more to it than just narration. I think it's a skill, it's an art, it's a science. In order to be able to bring out the right kind of trigger the right kind of emotions and release the right kind of hormones in the audience. So I hats off to all the authors. Thank you very much, Hari, Salil, and Deblina, for sparing your valuable time and sharing insights that we can never find in books. Thank you.